Okay, you're very welcome. So tonight we're going to look at the townlands in the area that's around the Crossmaglen, the town of Crossmaglen, also the townland of Crossmaglen. But in that wider district area, looking at what townlands they are and the information that we can have on each of them. So first of all, as you'll all know, this is the view facing Slievegullin, and Slievegullin, the highest mountain in the South Armagh area, and taking its dating back to 60 million years ago is the time frame of the formation of Slievegullin. So townlands, and why townlands are important. Townlands are the measure of an area. Ireland is the only place, so it's unique to Ireland, the measurement of land in townlands. There are 62,205 townlands across the island of Ireland, and roughly about 200 in the South Armagh area. So all of our historical data is in the boundaries of our townlands. If you want to do any type of historical research, all you need to know is your townland, and that will give you access to doing that research. So South Armagh and the Crossmaglen area. Armagh as a county was only formed in 1586. The counties are a relatively new way of measuring area in Ireland. The first counties in Ireland founded by the Catholic daughter of Henry VIII, Mary, and she founded Queen's County and King's County, which is now Laois and Offaly. And that system of creating counties was carried on by Elizabeth I, the Protestant daughter of Henry VIII, and it was her who founded the county of Armagh in 1586. But the older division of land is through the baronies. So the way of going was baronies into parishes into townlands. So that was your system of measurement. South Armagh it has two baronies, the barony of the Fews and the barony of Arrior. And this part of South Armagh is the Upper Fews. So we are in the barony of the Upper Fews. Now, the later thing that came in then were the poor law unions. And the poor law unions were set up on a radius of a 10-mile span. So the workhouse, because that was part of the poor law union, the workhouse serviced an area that was on a 10-mile radius. So South Armagh is actually broken up into three poor law unions. This part of Crossmaglen, Cullyhanning and Hamilton, all in Castleblaney, poor law union, from Anduff onwards back towards Newry, all in the Newry poor law union. And there are 9 townlands on that border with Tullydonnell, Kernally, Glasdrummond, which are in the Dundalk Union. So the barony of Upper Fews, the poor law union of Castleblaney, and then your civil parish of Cregan. Now, when we talk about civil parishes, they are the old Church of Ireland parishes, because right up until 1865, the Church of Ireland was the recognised church, and those civil parishes are part of that system. So that's when you go to do it. It only matters now because when you go to do research, that historical data is all in the civil parishes, not in what are now the Catholic parishes. And there are 54 townlands in the civil parish of Cregan. So we're starting tonight. What we've done tonight is to look at the name of the townland in English and Irish, the acreage of it, what its name means, and when it first appeared on maps, which is not the time the townland was formed. Townlands are pre-Norman. They're in existence before the 12th century. So they are an ancient part of our heritage. But when they first appeared on maps, and depending on where the area was or when it was. Now, maps, again, maps are, to the extent that we now know them, are a very modern phenomenon. But the map maker, Richard Bartlett, travelled Ireland with Lord Mountjoy. Mountjoy was Lord Lieutenant to Ireland Mountjoy, the man who was responsible for building Myra Castle on the Gap of the North. And Richard Bartlett travelled with him. He was a map maker, the beginning of the modern maps. Now, the area was mapped so that it could be taxed. That was the reason for putting so many of them on the map. Richard Bartlett went to Donegal, to O'Connell, where the natives weren't that keen on having their area mapped, and he went into Donegal and didn't come back out of it. He met his death in Donegal. So this is the date that they were first on those maps. And then we've looked at the 1911 census, which is the last census that is available online. The first census of Ireland was taken up in 1821 and then taken up every 10 years afterwards, just as it happens now. But the census material was stored in the Four Courts in Dublin, and the Four Courts were burned in the Civil War. So Ireland has very little census material before the 1901 census. The 1901 and the 1911 census are both online. And if we had been following that system of releasing the full census material after 100 years, there should be a census coming online this year in 2021, which would have been the 1921 census. But due to the partition of Ireland in 1921, there was no census material taken up either north or south in Ireland until the Boundary Commission had failed in 1926. And in 1926, a census was taken up north and south. So we won't have another census online until 2026. So we looked at the 1911 census in terms of the number of houses that were in it, the population, and the religious makeup within that townland area. So they're all things that give us a sense of what the townlands were like at that time, and it's a good way of going through when you're doing the same for each townland. So the first one, Anamar, it means the Great Marsh. It has 447 acres. It first appeared on the map in 1661, and in the 1911 census, it has 24 houses with a population of 97, and all of that population are Roman Catholic. Now, Anamar, again, a townland that has big significance for South Armagh, because in Anamar is one of the very, very well preserved court cairns. And court cairns are New Stone Age burials, so they're roughly dating from 3,500 to 4,000 BC. So it shows a footprint of a people in this area 6,000 years ago. Now, these are older than the Egyptian pyramids. The next townland is Kappa. Kappa meaning the tillage plot, and it didn't appear on a map until 1830. It has an acreage of 172 acres. And in the 1911 census, a small townland, it had 15 houses with a population of 50, and all of that population were Roman Catholic. Carron means the place of stones, and you'll see when you go through the townland names that there are prefixes that you start to recognize, that anywhere that has a beginning of lis or more, it means fort. Anywhere you have carrig, you have rock or stones. Tulla is the hillock of, and Ballia is the townland of. So you start to recognize your prefixes. So Carron, 309 acres, means the place of stones, and was on the maps in 1640. In the 1911 census, even though it's a bigger townland than the previous one, there were only 18 houses with a population of 74, and 74 of those Roman Catholic. Clarna, again, 357 acres, and it means the level marsh or moor or moor, and first appeared on the maps in 1657. In the 1911 census, this townland had 34 houses, a population of 116, and your population again in this townland, all Roman Catholic. Clareban, on Clareban, now a very small townland, but still a townland that's almost as well populated as some of the previous ones we've seen, which was much bigger. Clareban means the white plain. Bon, coming from the Irish, it means white. On the maps in 1760 and in the 1911 census, 14 houses, a population of 24 and 24 Roman Catholic. Now, the thing to be careful of when you're doing any sort of research around the census material, the census was taken up on the 1st of April of 1911. When the constable came to the house, which is how it was done at that stage, he numbered the townland, he numbered the houses where he began his census. And when he came to the house on that night to take up the census material, he recorded who was in the house. He didn't record the entire family if they weren't there. So if you had sons or daughters who were away to work, had been hired and were away in service, they weren't put down on the census material. So it doesn't give you a full picture. It's just something to be careful of. And if I were a visitor in your house on the night that the constable came to do the census, I was recorded on that census material. Now, when it was written up, I was shown as my own name, but recorded under your house number. So they're just things that when you go to do research that you need to look at and be careful of, because it's not a complete picture. The townland of Clog. Now, this is a big townland. Again, you can see the preface on within it, meaning stony. So it means the stony place, 929 acres, which is a substantial townland. On the maps in 1661 and in the 1911 census had 40 houses with a population of 186. Now you're moving much more towards a different area. You have right beside you here both the Church of Ireland at Cregan and the Presbyterian Meeting House at Freeduff. So your population begins to change here. Your population is 186, 79 of them Roman Catholic, 26 Church of Ireland, and 81 Presbyterian. So you see a different picture beginning to emerge here for the religious denomination. And these are important things to look at when you're going back to do any type of research. The townland of Crinkle, a smaller townland, 319 acres, and it means the withered or decayed wood, kill, kyle in Irish, the wood. On the maps in 1730 and in the 1911 census had 11 houses with a population of 49, and those 49 were Roman Catholic. Creganban, on Creganban, again the white rocky place, and Creganban Glebe. Anywhere that you see glebe in a name, glebe means church land. So you're right beside now where the Church of Ireland is at Cregan. 584 acres, meaning the white rocky place, and on the maps in 1609. In the 1911 census, this townland had 42 houses with a population of 169 and 144 Roman Catholic and 25 Church of Ireland. Now, the assumption, because the Church of Ireland and Cregan is such an important place, that the Church of Ireland congregation was very big is not right, because the Presbyterian community in that area were a bigger community than the Church of Ireland community. Crossmaglen, and again here now we're back into what is the area that houses the town. If the townland, the town of Crossmaglen is almost completely within the townland of Crossmaglen. So 304 acres, It means Lenin or McLennan's cross. The popular local tradition is that it was founded around a shebeen owned by Lenin. And certainly in Bassett's Guide to Armagh in 1888, Lenin is recorded as the owner of a hotel at that stage. So it was on the townland maps in 1609. In the 1911 census, it had a population of 97 houses, 97 houses with a population of 580. 516 Roman Catholic, 51 Church of Ireland, 11 Presbyterian and 2 Methodist. The Methodist Church in Crossmaglen was at the top of the square in Crossmaglen, and the square, the big feature of Crossmaglen, it is built around an internal square, the only really place that has a semblance of building around a structure. I remember being told at school that the square in Crossmaglen was second only in size at that time, at my primary school time, to St. Peter's in Rome. Drumbally, 285 acres, and it means the ridge of the way or the pass. On the maps in 1609, and in the 1911 census, had 16 houses with a population of 69, and all of that population in that townland were Roman Catholic. The townland of Drummuck, a very small townland, 138 acres, and it means the ridge of the pigs. Muck is the Irish word for pig. It was on the townland census, on the townland maps in 1609, and in the 1911 census had only 9 houses with a population of 37, and 37 of that population were Roman Catholic. Now, the townland of Drummuck of all is 288 acres. It means Campbell's Ridge, and was on the townland maps in 1655, with the 1911 census, 19 houses and a population of 79, and 79 Roman Catholic. So tonight I have placed these townlands in alphabetical order, just to make it easier to move it around and to follow it. But these are all cited, as you'll be able to see from your maps when you look at them. They're cited in different places, and that will give you a thinking then of around why your population figures are smaller for some townlands and larger for some, and why the religious denomination varies. Lissamry, again, a small townland of 135 acres. It means the summer fort. Lis or Rath will always give you a meaning of fort. On the maps in 1609, in the 1911 census, this townland had only 6 houses with a population of 22, all of whom were Roman Catholic. And Liscalget, 220 acres, and it means Calget's fort. A later townland on the maps from some of them at 1640, and in the 1911 census, even though it's a bigger townland than some, had only 13 houses with a population of 37, and 34 of them Roman Catholic and 3 Church of Ireland. Lissarau, again, we're coming to the Liss. It means the enclosure of the fort, and it has 260 acres. On the maps in 1657, and in the 1911 census, had 17 houses, a population of 87, 80 of whom were Roman Catholic, and 7 Church of Ireland. La Rosse, and naturally enough, La Rosse is meaning the Lake of the Wood, 251 acres. On the maps in 1665, now La Rosse, a part as well of the history of the area, because on La Rosse is a crannog, and a crannog is an artificially created island, and that we know from the history of the O'Neills, who were the chieftains here in the Fews, that the O'Neills had a house on the Cranagutla Ross, and that the 1641 rebellion implicated the O'Neills, the chieftains of the Fews who had their castle at Glasdrummun. It implicated them in that rebellion, and they subsequently lost their lands in South Armagh in the Cromwellian confiscation. So an important townland because of that history. In the 1911 census, 15 houses, a population of 53, and 53 Roman Catholic. Lurgan Columbai means the yellow, long, low hill of Holly. On the maps in 1657, and in the 1911 census had 51 houses, so substantial population in this townland of 202, 198 Roman Catholic and 4 Church of Ireland. Manug, again a smaller townland here, 224 acres. It means the little bog or the moor. On the maps in 1659, and because of its size in the 1911 census, 12 houses with a population of 44 and 44 Roman Catholic. My ban, again back to the bone, 340 acres, and it means the white plain. It means flat, so a plain area. If you see the in any of the townland names, it's going to give you the indication. These townland names are not taken. They're not a random name that has been placed on a townland. They are either an environmental feature within that townland, like the Liss or the Rath, which is the fort, Valley, which is the townland of, so it's giving you the name of the people who were in that own that townland. My meaning that it's low and flat. Craig, the Carrick, it means it's rocky and hilly. So they're environmentally the right names for the townlands that they are. So it was on the map in 1657. In the 1911 census, 23 houses with a population of 111, and 111 of those Roman Catholic. Rathkeelan, again the fort, it means Keelan's fort. 338 acres of the townland, on the maps in 1609, and in the 1911 census, 22 houses with a population of 94, and again that population all Roman Catholic in that area. Sheeland, now this is a very small townland, 91 acres, and it's marshy and boggy. It means the stream or the marshy place. Much later on the townland maps, not appearing until 1830. In the 1911 census, only had 3 houses in that townland with a population of 5 and 5 Roman Catholics. So even with that, you can see that if you have 3 houses but only a population of 5, that there may be people from those houses who weren't there when that census was taken up. Tyr is 248 acres, and Tyr Island right beside it, 127 acres. So Tyr means land or territory. And this one was early on the map in 1609. In the 1911 census, having 19 houses, a population of 82, and 82 of those Roman Catholic. Tully Ard meaning high. So Tully means hillock. Tully Ard, the high hillock, 187 acres, and late on the maps, not on the map until 1800. In the 1911 census, having 16 houses, a population of 69, and 69 Roman Catholic. Urker means the cast or the throw. Now the old oral history that went with that was that at Urker, where there was a very ancient church that you could cast a throw to the, or throw something to the church at Cregan. 497 acres on the map in 1609, and in the 1911 census had 18 houses with a population of 64, 54 Roman Catholic, 12 Church of Ireland, and 1 Presbyterian. Now, for research, and there are two different things we're looking at here in terms of research, because there is the research that gives you the information around land, and then there's the research that gives you the information around the people and the buildings. So to do the research around the land, if you go to Ask About Ireland, this brings you into Griffith's valuation. Griffith's valuation was taken up right across Ireland from 1846 to 1865. And in this South Armagh area, we were on the later run of that. But again, taken up to provide information to allow taxation on that land. So if you go into Ask About Ireland, it will bring you up Griffith's valuation of tenements, and then you select Griffith's places. And this is where your original information comes into use, because it will ask you to put in the name of your town land and your county, barony, parish, or union. So the more information you have there, the easier it is to research. Although at some, if the most important of those is the town land. If you have the town land name, you will be able to get in. You will find the name in there then of the landlord, who is, and that's written under what is at the top, the immediate lesser. You'll find your family name and the amount of land that you leased. You didn't own this land, you were leasing this land. The important thing about the number that's against that piece of land in Griffith's valuation, that number has remained constant to this day. So if you go to Land Registry in Belfast, the number that was put on that plot of land in 1860 is still that number that's on it today, and you will be able to trace how, when and where that land changed hands in that period between 1860 and today. So that's an important one for doing land research. And for the people research, the census you go to is the National Archives, and it will show you then the census years. Now, as I said, you get very little census material before 1901. We are a very lucky parish that I live in at Forkhill, because about 25 years ago, an 1821 census was found in the landlord's papers in Jackson's papers, and it gives 1821 census for 17 townlands, which is absolutely unique and priceless. So when you go into it, and across the top you click Browse Census and click whether you want to go into 1901 or 1911, and the information is in DEDs, which are district electoral divisions, and there are a number of townlands grouped together in each DED. So the easiest way to do it is look for a DED which is in the area your townland is in, because they are named after a townland as a DED but containing other townlands. So look for what is the most local to yourself. The first information you'll get is the families that are living in that townland. You can go in and actually print off an original 1901 census, which, if the person, when the constable arrived to do the census, if the person who was head of family, and that was usually the male member of the household, was regarded as head of family, if he could read and write, then he was permitted to fill in his own census form. So you can actually get a 1901 census, which for your children would show them the handwriting of, for them, probably 5 times ancestor and they can print it off and have it. If the person in the house didn't have literacy, then the constable filled in the form, and at the bottom of the form, the head of house put an X as his mark, and the constable signed it to say that he witnessed that person make a mark. So that's the first thing you can get on it. The second thing you can get, if you click on occupants, which is a transcribed printed form of that census material, and scroll down to the B1 form, it will give you a detail of the buildings in that townland. So you can find out if your townland had first class, second class, third class, or fourth class houses. You'll find in the South Armagh area, which would have been a relatively poor area, that a lot of the houses were of poor standing. So there weren't a significant number of first class houses within South Armagh. So this gives you all of the information, not only for your own family and the circumstances that your own family were living in, but it gives you information on the housing and the housing stock of the entire townland. The only difference in the 1901 census and the 1911 census is as you go across, when the head of house fills it in, they fill in how many years they have been married and how many children they have. Now, on the 1911 census, it gives you a further piece of information in that it will tell you how many children they have living, but it will tell you how many children were born. So you have a record of if 2 children were dead or 3 children were dead, which was quite common in all families at that time. And particularly important because it was also a time where people didn't talk to a lot, didn't talk even within families about loss of children. So people may not even have been aware that in a generation before them, that there were children had died or were born, maybe stillborn. But those are valuable pieces of information when you go to do your historical research. So townlands are really an important part of our historical, not only our historical research, but of our heritage. And townlands, as I said, pre-Norman, before the 12th century, and in existence right up until 1972, when a decision was taken by somebody in an office and they put a red pen mark through the townland system and they introduced rural road naming. The important thing to do now is the reclaiming of our townland names, and to do that you need to use the name. Children need to be aware of the townland that they live in and of the neighbouring townlands, and that's an important part of that reclaiming of the history. We started to put in townland stones first in the Mullaban area about 16 years ago, and Joe Mahan, who produced the programme Rural Spotted Ulster, came to launch the project for us, and he equated the taking away of the townland names on par with the destruction of the Book of Kells, which is a massive part of our Irish history. But that, in his eyes, that was the same thing. So townland stones and the reclaiming of the townlands is very much a project that is ongoing now in the South Armagh area. And through the Ring of Gullion Landscape Partnership, stones have been purchased for each of the townlands within South Armagh, and hopefully over the next number of months those townland stones will be put in place. So thank you very much for joining into the programme tonight. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that it's the first of many that we will do around the townland stories. Thank you. Good night.